What's up, guys? It's your boy, the essential John L. Crossfire, aka the real main event, aka the Rogue Soldier, and today you're about to learn firsthand just what it's like to be caught in the crossfire. But above all else, prepare yourself, because in this very moment, today, right now, you are about to be caught in conversation. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 54 of Caught in Conversation. As always, I am your host, the essential John L. Crossfire. Of course, you hear that every week in the intro. Truly hope you're all doing well, and if not, I hope I can at least be a momentary distraction for you. Once again, here I am recording at 2:30 in the morning, but this time I actually have an excuse. I had an accident in the kitchen earlier tonight as I record this while trying to do the dishes. So here I am, trying not to wake people up, but also not trying to sound too boring. So hopefully this is a good episode, but I'm getting ready to head back to Sydney in a few days' time as I record this. I'm on day 23 post-op, have to leave this coming Tuesday for an appointment with the eye specialist Wednesday. So hopefully by next episode we'll have some sort of a quick health update, but I'm plugging along, and I hope you guys that are listening are plugging along too. Really quick though, before we jump into the wrestling, I'm still reeling for what was a really great opening round of State of Origin. Honestly, one of the best opening rounds of State of Origin that I've seen in quite a number of years. I actually got to sit down and watch it live on TV for a change with Mrs. Crossfire. We had a great little football date night. That was nice. Usually life gets in the way and I kind of tune in here and there. But for the first time in I think 4, maybe even 5 years, I actually got to sit down and enjoy every single second live as it happened. Absolutely night and day between both New South Wales and Queensland respective defensive lines. Queensland obviously had, the upper hand. Their defence was almost rock solid. Big ups to Cameron Munster for getting man of the match. He absolutely deserved it. I said to Mrs. Crossfire about 60-ish minutes in, so with about 20 minutes to go, that he definitely deserved it, and he did, so yay. I am, of course, disappointed that, New South Wales didn't get the win, but I was right on the edge of my seat the entire time, which is exactly what you want, or it's exactly what I want, at least, out of a football game. And it was a lot closer than I was expecting it to be when you looked at it on paper, so I give both teams mad props to that. Very much looking forward to Game 2 so that myself and Mrs. Crossfire can sit down, eat some food, and just scream at the TV some more. I did feel sorry for my brother-in-law, because myself and Mrs. Crossfire were constantly shouting at the TV for the entire 80 minutes, to be honest. But I guess that's one thing about being off work due to recovering from surgeries, that now I do now have more time to enjoy myself. It's kind of crazy that, in this day and age, it takes major surgery to actually get some sort of holiday away from work. But these are the cards we've been dealt. That's what it is. Could always be worse. Nonetheless, I digress. We've finished watching Storage Wars this week as well, and we're already impatiently waiting Season 14 to drop here in Australia. We've still got the spin-off ones to watch, but we also started watching the A&E series of WWE's Most Wanted Treasures. There's some really good stuff in there. It sucks that there's only 9 episodes, but they're pretty interesting in my opinion. They've only got 3 of those episodes available on Foxtel here in Australia, so you got to find somewhere else to watch them. You can, scour the internets to find the rest of the season, but thoroughly enjoyed what we have seen of that so far. I'm a sucker for these kind of series, hence why I'm myself, along with Mrs. Crossfire, we did enjoy, Storage Wars so much, and the fact that this one is kind of along those same lines, but it's also wrestling themed, definitely, obviously, it's going to pique both mine and Mrs. Crossfire's respective interests. The song of the week this week is Separate Ways by Vanishing Point. This, of course, is a cover of the infamous Journey song. Even if the song name doesn't ring a bell, I dare say, if you heard the song, I'd be really surprised if you listening to this didn't at least know the chorus when it comes on, but it slaps pretty hard. Dare I say it, it's a banger. But again, that song is Separate Ways by Vanishing Point. Moving on to the actual wrestling this week, though. I think it would be remiss if I did not talk about the amazing effort put forth by Cody Rhodes this past week at Hell in a Cell. Of course, Seth Rollins brought the fire as well. Seth Rollins always puts out a great performance. But Cody Rhodes, obviously, going into this match, inside the cell itself, no less, with a fully torn pectoral, fully torn pec. It was torn completely off the bone. And when you look at the obvious bruising and swelling, you could tell that he was clearly in agony every second of the match. And I've said multiple times, on social media, and I'll reiterate here on the pod, that while I don't agree with Cody being in the ring at all, in that type of condition, I'm also a bit of a hypocrite in a way, because as a worker, I do fully understand that, that constant burning desire, just to perform no matter what. And sometimes passion can be a dangerous thing, and luckily nobody is hurt because of it. I mean, any further than Cody already was, torn back aside, obviously, but the way they put the match together was just absolutely brilliant. There was a lot of times these days, you do encourage people not to work injured, not only because they risk hurting themselves, but you risk hurting your opponent as well. But by the way these two guys in Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins just built this match, it was just fantastic. Dare I say it? I'll throw it out there. I'll give that the chef's kiss. The only thing in this match that could have hurt Seth Rollins realistically, besides the actual Hell in a Cell structure itself, was Seth himself. So just brilliant stuff there. And I guess in the case of Cody Rhodes, the logic was, well, it's already off the bone and needs surgery anyway, so I guess it does make sense to an extent. But yeah, just brilliant stuff there. I just hope it really doesn't set a precedent to everyone that it is okay to do this kind of stuff, because you might cry about double standards, because Cody was allowed to, so why can't I, or weren't they allowed, or why weren't they allowed to? But I mean, you're right in a way, but double standards aside, I think if it does set a precedent, it will increase the risk even further of seeing more workers get hurt. And obviously, they could then further hurt themselves even more, as I said, possibly hurt their opponents more. Obviously, as I said, the way these two guys, they built the match, Seth wasn't really going to get hurt at all, but just brilliant stuff here. I hope it doesn't set, a precedent, even though, it may come across as double standards or whatever it is. But Dave Meltzer has since gone on to give this match 5 stars, which, while I don't agree with that statement, as it still wasn't the caliber of an Edge versus Seth Rollins in their Hell in a Cell match last year in Saudi Arabia at Crown Jewel, I can respect that. And, as I said, the drama, the psychology behind it all, absolutely superb. Obviously, action-wise, if you will, it's not going to be that kind of caliber due to Cody's injury, but I just feel like Dave is being a little bit biased towards Cody there, but it is what it is. It's his opinion. Here I am talking about his opinion on my podcast, so maybe that's a little bit redundant, but I disagree with his take there. But an absolutely great match, though, between Cody and Seth. Cody's stock definitely going up. People can get mad at me for saying this, but his last couple of months back in WWE, he's already looked like a bigger star than he did in his entire run in AEW. And again, as I discussed on this same podcast with Hellfire, maybe that was Cody Rhodes' own doing. Maybe he booked himself into a corner, but that's just the way I'm looking at it. Nonetheless, Cody Rhodes, when he recovers, he in my opinion, he's going to come back with a vengeance. He's going to come back strong, brother. But overall, both Hell in a Cell and Raw the night after were actually pretty good too, which a very pleasant surprise, definitely welcome surprise. First time since WrestleMania that I've actually watched a WWE pay-per-view or premium live event, or PLE for short, as they're calling them now. The first time I've watched it in full, and first time I've watched a full episode of Raw in, I don't even know how long. It was actually well before WrestleMania, I think. I may have covered one here on the pod, so you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, nothing jumps out to me. But the opening triple threat match for the Raw Women's Championship at Hell in a Cell, honestly, one of the best matches I've seen so far this year in any promotion. Like, Asuka, Becky, Bianca, they absolutely busted their asses. And I said this on social media, but Bianca Belair, in my opinion, she's honestly well on her way to being the greatest women's professional wrestler of all time. And, that might seem like, oh, okay, that's a bit much, but look at what she's accomplished already. Look at what she brings to the table. Look at, how much of a star and an inspiration she is. What's that going to be in 10 years' time, I feel like she's going to surpass Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, dare I say Sasha Banks. You know, Sasha's my all-time favorite women's wrestler. Personally, obviously, her and Naomi, bit of you know, I don't know, bit of controversy there, I guess you'd say. I'm not even going to add that out. Fuck it. Bit of controversy. But, yeah, and then, you know, someone like Trish Stratus, Lita, Mickie James, you know, even a Beth Phoenix, you know, Bianca, in my opinion, she's going to surpass all of them. And again, that's just my opinion. But, yeah, that triple threat match, absolutely fantastic. Bobby Lashley really got himself over. Wouldn't be surprised to see him back in the main title picture sooner than later, except this time as a babyface. Austin Theory is being built up absolutely brilliantly. And it was great to see Mustafa Ali get a moment on pay-per-view or premium live event in his hometown. Still looked very strong, brother, even in defeat, which is always great to see. I just hope that this doesn't mean that now that, you know, he's had that moment, he kind of just gets taken off TV and sits in catering again, because, you know, the dude, you know, he requested his release. They denied it. He sat at home, and then finally they gave him a moment in his hometown, no less. So hopefully he continues to, you know, keep building some steam. But I thoroughly enjoyed the match between Kevin Owens and Ezekiel. That storyline has been one that, although I haven't been actually watching it, I have been keeping up very intently every week online. Everyone in that feud is playing their respective parts to absolute perfection. And it's honestly been one of the main highlights for the last month or so on Raw from what I've seen. And then, you know, the main event, as I just talked about, which was Seth and Cody inside Hell in a Cell, which spurred this whole rant. But the segment on Raw the night after, Seth and Cody, fantastic from start to finish. I'll be honest, I didn't actually see the swerve of Seth attacking Cody to write him off TV until Seth was physically running behind him on the screen. Cody was made to look very strong again, brother, by eventually still hobbling out away on his own 2 feet. Having Edge kicked out of his own group of the Judgment Day, with Finn Balor being the new leader, was really well done in my opinion. People are crying that it's too soon, but the way I look at it is 3 months of a group is still 3 months of a group, especially when it's on television literally every single week. So it's still at a fairly, you know, decent time to fester. And I would have liked to see it go a little bit longer on a personal level, because I just liked the pairing of Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest, you know, being mentored by Edge. But I honestly see nothing wrong in breaking them up here. And if you want to believe the rumors / reports, the main reason for turning Edge back into a face rather, is due to Cody's injury. And apparently he also disagreed with them going down the fully supernatural route, which, you know, that seems kind of petty, but at the same time I dig it, because a full, you know, heel Demon King Finn Balor would just be fucking dope. But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when Cody does return from injury, and seeing where this leads us, you know, into 2023, because we're halfway through 2022 at this point. We're heading into Money in the Bank season, which is always fun to speculate and fantasy book a whole of, you know, who's going to get the case, why should they get the case, you know, how they're going to cash in, you know, lots of different Markapalooza type scenarios, if you will. But as always, I encourage all of you guys to hit me up with any opinions that you may have on any or all of these subjects, and just get those conversational juices flowing. Let's get caught in conversation. That's why I started the podcast, guys. The match of the week this week is Mick Foley versus Randy Orton in a hardcore match at Backlash 2004. This match seemed super appropriate given what I'm about to talk about, and the fact that Randy Orton's involvement kind of plays well as like a little pun as well into the title of this episode. Kind of funny in a way when I think about it, that both last year's Hell in a Cell event and this year's Hell in a Cell have kind of factored into what are essentially filler episodes of the pod, if you will. And of course I say that, you know, tongue in cheek. It's more that I wasn't as prepared as I would have liked to be for the episode, just because, you know, there's no interviews or full reviews, that type of thing, but just kind of almost an audio diary, I guess, of what wrestling I've watched and how I felt about that wrestling, etc., etc., etc. But this match here is still up as one of Randy Orton's best matches too, which is, it's crazy when you think about the fact that he's nowhere near even thinking about being the level of performer back then that he has become. And this is arguably, you know, the one that made him a made man, so to speak, within the WWE. Mick Foley in this one digs a little bit into Cactus Jack with a tiny bit of Mankind thrown in, and it's also one of Mick Foley's most memorable matches as well, which is crazy to think about when you factor in not only, the stage that he was at in his career at that point, but all the insane moments that had already led up to that. But again, the match of the week this week is Mick Foley versus Randy Orton at Backlash 2004. Moving on to what will be the main portion of this week's episode, the main event, if you will. This week, we finally, with the news that A&E would be renewing the WWE Legends series. Well, they have renewed it. Season 2 is about to drop. Myself and Mrs. Crossfire finally thought we'd better hurry up and finally finish Season 1. I don't know how many times that I said finally. My bad, guys. I'm really looking forward to Season 2, especially with the look we're going to get at The Undertaker. That could easily be, a 2-hour-long special, in my opinion. But the remaining episodes that we had for Season 1 were The Ultimate Warrior. I wasn't sure how to feel going into this one, as I'm not the biggest fan of the person behind the character. And, it's one of those ones where, the person and the character are almost very much one and the same. He kind of really blended them both together as the years went on. But this was a great look into how that came about and why it came about. It was a great look into his childhood and young adult life, which I guess led to, making him to who he was in a lot of aspects. And, it doesn't excuse his many homophobic and racist rants and his treatment of people in general, but it is a lot easier to see why he was unfortunately somewhat of a messed up person. Not to speak ill of the dead, but it is what it is. It is also interesting, though, to hear the flip side of that when it does come to his wife and daughters and just immediate family and friends, and hearing how caring he was. That is a refreshing statement to hear. They revisited some of the stuff that they touched on back in 04-05 with the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior documentary, from, looking back to how the fame pretty much did go to his head, which, unfortunately, it's a very common thing in a lot of industries that fall in the public eye, especially in professional wrestling / sports entertainment. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here, but I really don't agree with it. I've always been of the very, stay humble or be humbled mindset. But for the sake of this, I won't trash the man or the character. And as I said, I don't like speaking ill of the dead, but this did give me a tiny bit more respect for him, but not that much more. They went deeper into this than they did with the Dark Side of the Ring episode that was on him, which made me glad, because all the way, the truth is always going to be better than a lie. Overall, the character of the Ultimate Warrior will still always be one of the most memorable characters in professional wrestling, and I very much enjoyed this. I very much enjoyed the documentary. Mrs. Crossfire, I feel, was just a tad more invested than I was, because she's very big on the human psychology, side of things, the human brain. But I give A&E, WWE, and Warriors family props for just being so transparent about everything without it being a straight-up smear campaign like the self-destruction one was. Of course, they did make up for that with the Hall of Fame induction and the subsequent documentary that followed that as well. But this was a great mix of the two. We moved on from the Ultimate Warrior episode, and then we had Mick Foley. I was very, very excited to finally watch this one, as Mick is always a fantastic storyteller, even if he does have a habit of sometimes telling the same stories over and over again. But he does have a very long history of concussions, so, you cut him some slack on that one. But Mick's story, much like, Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels earlier in the season, is one of those ones that it's been told many times by other people as well, but they somehow managed to dig even deeper in this one, just like they did the aforementioned ones. And I really love that they dug deep into the creation of all three characters, really, but showing the Cactus Jack character and how it evolved and advanced, and showed people genuinely having disdain for what Mick was doing to his body, in that period. And it was really awesome to see them take another look at the King of the Death match, exploding barbed wire match with Terry Funk. That's one of my favorite matches. It's just, it's nothing technical. It's explosions and barbed wire, but both dudes, they busted their ass. And if you haven't seen that match, go out of your way to try and find it somewhere. But it was awesome to see them looking into his heel run in ECW as well, and they showed the infamous Kane Dewey promo and shed even more light on that, which, that's a story that I've heard a couple of times, and even Mrs. Crossfire now, she's seen it, but just watching it back and hearing me talk about it will always give me goosebumps. It's just such a great promo. And we even got some great out-of-character stuff from The Undertaker, where he broke character, during a promo shooting, and they showed the bloopers basically from that, which made me chuckle. I honestly had goosebumps watching quite a lot of this episode. This might have been my favorite episode of the entire season, 1000%. Go check out this episode if you can. The whole series is free in Australia on SBS On Demand. It does get a bit feelsy at the end when Mick is talking about how, he was forced to retire, due to his health. But if you've followed his journey, or hell, even if you haven't and you watched this documentary, you'll still see that, it's a miracle he's managed to go as long as he did. And it's a miracle that he's still here. And obviously we're very much glad that he is, It's just amazing all the stuff that he does as well for charity and the community and whatever else. Mrs. Crossfire actually started to tear up at the end there. And I'll be honest, I did as well. And that led us in to the final episode of the series, which was Bret the Hitman Hart. I wasn't sure what to expect going into this because, again, this is another one that's been told, this story's been told a fair chunk of times, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed the quick look they gave us, at the upbringing of Bret's father, Stu. Many, wrestling stories about Stu Hart, but it was nice to really see the man behind the legend, if you will. We got a brief rundown of the family tree, which is always fascinating because there's so many of them and it's so hard to keep track on. The Hart family and the Samoan bloodlines, just two massive wrestling families, and it's always cool seeing how they're all intertwined. But the highlight for me, I think, was the bits where they revisited the feuds between Bret and Davey and Bret and Owen respectively. And, the obvious thing here is we go into Bret and Shawn Michaels and their feud. It's been very documented, even the behind-the-scenes stuff, but it's a very core part of Bret's story, so it kind of has to be in there, even if it is almost a case of, almost beating a dead horse, if you will, in a lot of ways. But, of course, that does lead us to talking about the Montreal Screwjob. I don't need to harp on that. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of wrestling podcasts out there that have and will continue to talk about that. I will give credit one thing, though. He did finally admit that regardless of whose fault it was, who was right, who was wrong, all parties in their own way were guilty, and that gave me a bit more respect for him for that. Of course, he is one of the greatest, psychological minds in terms of putting a match together. There will never be another Bret Hart, but just I've never really been a big fan of how bitter he is, and in a lot of ways, you honestly, you can't blame him. He has been through the ringer a few times and back, but yeah, I give him credit for that one. Just overall, though, it's really good to see Bret Hart, just in a happy place. He's at peace with himself nowadays. And as I said, he's just one of the greatest, one of the greatest of all time in terms of, match psychology and telling a story. I highly recommend this episode and just, again, the whole series to anyone that gets the chance to watch it. I'm really looking forward to season 2. They have announced, as I mentioned just before, The Undertaker, which is definitely the one I'm most looking forward to, as this will be the most in-depth look we've ever gotten at him, because he's only just in the last few years really started to do out-of-character stuff, and then his recent Hall of Fame induction a couple of months ago was the most in-depth he's got. But this is going to be an even more extended version of that. And then we've got Edge, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, Goldberg, the Bella Twins, Lex Luger, D-Generation X, and a special look at the first ever WrestleMania. It starts on July 10th on A&E in the US. I'm not sure yet on the release date here in Australia. I haven't got a chance to look into that as I record this. And, for the sake of the episode, considering that's what I'm talking about, I probably should have really looked into that. But here we are. But yeah, it is an absolute fantastic series, as I said. Again, crack record over here. But even if you're not a wrestling fan, like I know family and friends, they listen to these episodes just to show me support or just to have some background noise. Even if you're not a fan, chuck these on, chuck the episodes on just for background noise and just kind of peek over every now and then. You'll be amazed at some of the stories you hear and some of the things you see. It's really great stuff. But again, the whole thing is available for free on SBS On Demand here in Australia. But that's going to bring me to a close for this week. It's a pretty short episode, but it is what it is. As I said, it's almost 10 to 3 in the morning as I record this. My bad, but not much has happened this week. I've just kind of been chilling, getting ready. Myself and Mrs. Crossfire have just been binge watching shows in between, trying to clean the house. We got a house inspection coming up. Oh, the joys! Somewhat fillerish, as I alluded to, but I feel I'm happy with what I produced. Just this episode just kind of came to me in a sense. I was like, oh, why not talk about it? It was fascinating. I thought it was fascinating. Hit me up though if you guys have seen the series. Tell me what you thought, what your favorite episode was, who's someone you'd like to hear an episode on, which episode of season 2 are you most looking forward to. As I said, guys, I'm always keen to just chat about wrestling in general. That's the reason I started the podcast in the first place. I'm ADHD as fuck. I hyperfocus. Professional wrestling's the thing that I hyperfocus on. My brain almost never stops. Like, I'll be laying in bed at all hours of the night and I'm just thinking of promos and matches and merch ideas and just, ideas for other people as well. Wrestling. It fucking consumes me. And, one of these days I'll finally have the money to start my own promotion, but that's neither here nor there right now. But as always, sounding like a crack record, I thank you guys for your constant support. Please remember to check the links in the description for my social media, merch, and upcoming events. The song of the week this week was Separate Ways by Vanishing Point. The match of the week this week was Mick Foley versus Randy Orton at Backlash 2004. Peace, love, and wrestling, all that jazz. I am the essential John L. Crossfire, and you were just caught in conversation. Legend, wait for it, Derry.